you'll see great towers reaching up to the heavens.
From a towering building to a gigantic warrior, can modern analysis of biblical text also shed light on the famous story of the shepherd boy David, who single-handedly killed the giant Goliath? Was there a weapon and technique deadly enough to fell a giant with just one blow? It's one of the most famous underdog stories ever told. An attacking force armed with technologically superior weapons is led by a giant warrior feared by all. But he's brought down by a single stone, slung by a boy named David. With a sling and a stone, David smote the Philistine giant.
David not only defeated Goliath, but defeated the Philistines, and by defeating the Philistines was actually the motivating force for the beginning of the history of Israel.
But how difficult would it have been for a boy to strike and kill a giant with just one stone?
The sling is the great ignored and underrated weapon of the ancient world. It's very cheap, it's the weapon of poor people, but it was incredibly effective.
As two armies stood facing each other on the field of battle, why was a boy pitted against a giant? It was the 11th century BC, and the people of Israel were confronted by their enemies, the Philistines.
The Philistines came from the area of the Aegean Islands, equipped with the most modern technological weapons against a very small, minor nation.
The Philistines' champion Goliath wore an armor of bronze.
He had a tremendous amount of armor, which when we actually weigh by the that which is mentioned in the Bible will come close to 125 pounds. So you see this unbelievably large, monstrous creature.
When Goliath offered to settle the battle by single combat, David stepped forward. But David was not just any boy. He would later become King David. After Jesus, his is the most complete biography in the Bible.
I think that David had a plan because, as he mentions to Saul, I can handle Goliath just as I've handled the bears and the wolves that attacked my flock. My flock now is the Israelite army. My weapon is the slingshot. There is the wolf and the bear.
Ancient discoveries will use modern technology and clues from the Bible itself to determine David's technique. First, we must find the perfect sling for one-to-one combat. The most advanced sling of ancient times had been adapted to give extra power.
This device I'm holding is called a staff sling, which is basically a sling which is attached to a long pole.
The pole gives the slinger a greater reach and therefore more power in every throw. This made it a favorite for heavier projectiles like the primitive bombs used as mortars on ancient battlefields. But would this have been the best sling for David to use against Goliath?
I think the idea that David could have used a staff sling is fairly unlikely. This isn't a particularly accurate weapon. The way I like to think of this is that the highly trained hand sling throwers were more like a modern-day sniper in that they were highly skilled, highly trained, and they could send a very small projectile with amazing accuracy.
David needed a hand sling.
The kind of slings that are used in the Near East throughout the late Bronze Age are made pretty much like this. It's braided out of hemp. This is the sort of projectile that was used in Judea, in Israel. You're looking for a very specific size and shape. A nice smooth oval shape.
The aerodynamic shape improves the accuracy of the throw.
You need a certain amount of weight to get the projectile to stay in the pouch of the sling happily. If it's too light, it will just fall out as you swing the sling back. If it's too heavy, it won't go as fast when you shoot it. So between those parameters is the ideal sling stone.
He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. With a sling and stones like the ones David himself might have held, we can test this weapon's capabilities. Luis Pons Livermore is the slinging champion of the Balearic Islands, home for millennia to the world's greatest slingers.
The Balearic Islands get this reputation of being the best slingers in the ancient world. They get an inherited expertise in using the sling.
Luis has travelled to the Holy Land to test the destructive power of a replica Iron Age woolen sling and stone. He's investigating the technique David would have used to bring down Goliath.
The sling is like an extension of the arm. It has 3 sections. One ring is here, then there is the middle part where the stone goes. It ends in a knot here. You put your middle finger in here and you hold it in a pinch, not a grip. The stone is put in the top part of it. You simply spin it 3 times, stretch your arm and open your hand.
The snap heard from a slingshot is a sonic boom. So much power is released that the end of the sling actually breaks the sound barrier. Luis has erected a 9-foot Goliath target whose forehead is represented by a load cell, a device that measures impact. It's only 4.6 square inches in area, equivalent to the region of Goliath's forehead that was not protected by armor. The device will tell Luis just how much force would have hit Goliath's skull. But for a missile the size and shape of a sling stone, how much force would be required in order to kill?
If we're talking about how much force that is necessary to kill somebody by an impact to the brain, anything over 3,000 newtons spread over an area of 30 millimeters squared is enough to kill a human being. A shockwave goes through the brain and causes the brain to strike the inside of the brain case, irreversibly damaging the brain tissue to such an extent that it couldn't work again.
3,000 newtons or 3 kilonewtons is equivalent to the force necessary to smash a concrete block in half. Luis prepares his sling for the test. The target is tiny, equivalent to the only area of Goliath's forehead that was not protected by armor.
.62 kilonewtons. That's sufficient to eliminate Goliath with a sling and a stone. Goliath is now dead.
He slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. To have achieved such a shot must have taken extraordinary skill and nerve. Even Luis, a champion slinger, has found it exceptionally difficult to attain power and accuracy at the same time.
To be able to take out an armoured man with one sling stone is a lucky or an incredibly skillful shot, even for a very skilled slinger.
He must have been endowed with some tremendous skill, ability, and capability that came to the fore at the time of a crisis. And the fact that he was able to face a crisis successfully is one of the basic requirements for ultimate kingship.
Ancient discoveries has shown that it is possible for a boy to sling a stone with enough power and accuracy to kill a giant. But to do this, David must have been more skilled than an average shepherd boy in the arts of a warrior, and very lucky, or as the Bible suggests, truly blessed. One of the Bible's most mysterious episodes